reach,
inspire,
and transform. NASM Optima 2021 Virtual Conference.
our biggest and best Optima yet.
3 full days of learning.
More than 100 virtual sessions.
Inspiring speakers you can't miss.
Challenging workouts to master your skills.
Nutrition and lifestyle facts.
The best community network.
And for the first time ever, with free full online access.
At Optima 2021.
Find out more and register today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I'm Regional Master Instructor Marty Miller, here with my dear friend, fellow Regional Master Instructor, Miss Wendy Batts. How's it going today, Wendy?
I'm good, Marty. How are you?
Excellent. As you know, I just love doing these with you, so I can't wait to jump into today's topic.
Yes, I think today when we talk about behavioral change, I mean, this really hits home to me and something that I constantly have to remind myself of the different stages because, you get clients that are scared to death to come into the gym. And, as a trainer, they're already, they're nervous about walking in the doors. They're nervous about, are they in the right attire? They don't know, maybe they've heard about you, but they haven't met you, or they're not sure what you look like. So there's so many fears, when they actually walk through the door. But when, someone's new to exercise and they're new to having a trainer, when we go through and talk about the Transtheoretical Model, I think it really plays an important role to understand maybe how long it took them to actually commit to even walking through those doors, let alone what their journey is up ahead.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And, a couple weeks back, we did one more on the research that I did for my doctorate. And I was very interested in why people didn't exercise or why people started exercising and then stopped. Because, to me, it's a must. You have one body, you're going to live in it your whole life. Why not take care of it? Doesn't mean it's easy for us all the time. But, I thought that this was something I wanted to study. So, Wendy, I got a couple emails from that one Master Instructor Roundtable. And this was kind of when you and I were talking about ideas. I'm like, you know what? We do have an answer for them to get better at this side of the business. And as you and I talked about, there's the science and then there's the art of training. And I think that people that take the behavioral change specialist start to really understand that communication, that thought process, and then they can really match those skills up with the awesome science that they learned through the OBT model and really then become impactful.
Absolutely. And, and that's one of the things we wanted to kind of bring to the forefront because you have to be able to read people and you have to be able to understand and, be empathetic when it's time to be empathetic, be strong-willed and hold them accountable when it's appropriate. So there are a lot of different variables in order to be successful with your clients. And I think with NASM's behavioral, change specialist course that we have, I think they really do a good job kind of outlining truly how to work with people of all different types, because it's not just about different sizes. It's about how people process the information as well.
Absolutely. And people go through changes, as they go through life, different stages of their life. We all go through stressful times in our life and then also, no,
sure?
I know you don't, but some of us do. Yeah. Just saying, that's why, I'm losing my hair and yours is, everything's perfect. But, we need to understand how people may change their thought process and how life affects them, because it's not just about, hey, let's get in and get the exercise. We got to connect with them as human beings. So that way, we can provide them the best service possible.
Oh, and what I find interesting, and Marty, I know you don't do this because you're very regimented in your life and you're very good at your nutrition. I, on the other hand, I live life to the fullest and then I work out in order to live life to the fullest. And so, I indulge in the desserts and, maybe having a beverage or two that may be higher in calories than water. But, I think it's interesting how people just associate your job and the person that you are just in general. You don't have to be a trainer. It just, that is not okay to live, and that's just it. And I think that's one thing we want to actually change when people come in too, is understanding I'm not here to put you on a diet. I'm not here to let you lose a certain number of pounds. I want you, yes, to hit specific goals, but there is a journey ahead. There's a lifestyle change. It's a mental reset in your head. And, because people are like, oh my goodness, you had a candy bar. And I'm like, yes. And it was fantastic. And so, but because I'm a trainer, I'm not allowed to do that. And, unfortunately, that's what people think. And, they also think the trainers should look a specific way and wear certain clothes in certain situations. And, some trainers choose to do that. Some don't. I'm usually in a polo and pants when I am at the gym, depending on the clients. But there are some that are not in those types of clothes. And, I wear yoga pants and stuff like that too, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. And again, we go back through when you understand behavior and how people think, things like that, sometimes it just comes down to helping people understand that what the process is and that they're going to be the healthiest version of themselves, right? Because sometimes their goals will not match up with anything that is realistic, just whether it's their DNA, whether it's whatever it is. So we just want to make sure that we can connect with them at the right point, have these skills that you'll see here. And we only highlighted some of the course. We couldn't get through all of it, but just to kind of lay out the soft skills, I like to call them, that you need to elicit better changes in someone's behavior. And then, physically, good things happen. Sometimes, the change could be out of our control, but if we can get them compliant, if we can get them to enjoy it and working harder, good things happen.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to, what are we talking about today? Besides just behavior change specialists, let's kind of go into the intro. So, we, as I mentioned, NASM does have a specific course called the Behavior Change Specialist, that if you're looking for continuing education, I think this is a fantastic course. And I know they had some great contributors that have researched this. And, that, like I said, they've explained different types of models and ways to understand the processes that people go through, as you said, Marty. And then, of course, we are going to define the differences between art and science, because it is different. I mean, when we defined it, so I won't tell you now, it'll be on the next slides. And then again, like I said, being a behavior change specialist, I mean, I think, it's more than one course. You have to practice it. You have, just like anything, in order to be really good at a craft and really good at understanding people, you have to apply the information and see what works and what doesn't.
Yep, absolutely. And the one thing that I've learned, and I think that if I want to give a
the
key
one
takeaway
thing,
is
the one
just
thing
one.
you've
That's
learned.
all.
Wow.
That's all I've learned.
I want to be you.
Exactly. I learned the one thing, and then everything else falls into place, right? I can't tell you, but I'll tell everybody else, is when you communicate with your clients, you're always going to be better off communicating in a safer manner, whether you're using positive reinforcement, not talking about certain topics, but not talking about, their looks and their thing, because you just don't know what's going to cause a negative response to them. So we have to be very careful too in what we see maybe on TV or what we see on Instagram with that yelling and screaming, and be motivating, but be supportive as you motivate, and use positive feedback. I never use negative reinforcement, because of what I've learned in my doctorate or what I've learned in the behavior change specialist, because all it takes is that one trigger and you can send somebody into a spiral. And, I think we have to be very cognizant of that. And I think Instagram and social media and TV shows have made people sometimes forget that we're dealing with emotional human beings that do have triggers or certain ways they perceive things. And we need to be very careful about that.
Yes. And I mean, when we think about continuing education, I mean, yes, when we're talking about the course, you get continuing education for continuing the course. But I always look at it as continuing education for the client as well. And what I mean by that is I always, even in the assessment process, I tell them, hey, based on what you said with this discomfort, and, you notice that you were having some issues when you take your shoes off for the day, when you're walking around, that you may have pain here, in different places. I think it's important to be able to teach them and put things back together and explain to them, don't get sciencey. They don't care. And they don't want to know, what muscle does what. But if you kind of tell the story to make it make sense, that amount of rapport that you're building from the start makes a huge, huge difference. And I know for me, I'm a why person. So I always explain that, like, listen, hey, the reason why we're doing this is to help with this, this, and this long term. Always have rationales for everything that you're doing with your client. Don't just read a magazine, think this is a cool thing to do. If it doesn't make sense, if it's not going to be something that is going to be beneficial at that time, hold it for a later time, or maybe just disregard it altogether. And, just teach your clients as well, because they will keep coming back. I've had people say, if you teach them too much, they're just going to leave. And that is not the case, because I have people that I would love to get rid of because I've had them for a long time. I need to bring in someone new that needs my help, but I don't have any room. But then again, now they've become family. And so it's like, I know they know what to do, but they still come and see me because they want to spend time with me.
Yeah.
And pay me.
Well, of course, that doesn't everybody. I had a personal trainer at one of our workshops when we were doing live. And I went through that process. Like, I'm always trying to teach, always trying to make the person self-reliant without me. And somebody goes, Marty, you're educating them too much. And are you worried about them leaving you? I said, first of all, if I can teach them everything I know and they can execute it, I don't know much. And the personal trainer paused and they're like, okay, I get it. Because even if we have them for 3 hours a week, we know that's not enough. And the more I teach them, then I can build to the next part that goes off of what I just taught them. So I completely agree. I have the same philosophy.
I had a client tell me this actually yesterday. You were in my head because I went to the grocery store and I had people there. I was looking at how they're pushing their cart and their feet were out, and they were trying to read labels and their head was really forward. And I'm thinking, you know what? I have done such a good job because I want them to be able to see it. And then I'll say, when you see it, it bothers you, right? And you're like, well, and they say, well, yeah, because I know that if they don't learn to fix that, they're going to end up having some issues in their lower back, and they're going to actually come, and have to see someone like I had to see you in order to correct those issues. So to me, I think that's fantastic. I love getting that type of feedback because I know that when I really taught them that, it triggered. So now they're more aware, not only of themselves, but others around. And so I told them to start passing out my card, because it won't be long until they need help.
Exactly. I love running circles in my clients' heads.
I know. I'm always there. So, all right, if we move forward to the next slide and we talk about really, truly, the importance of continuing education. I mean, we mean this like both for the trainer as well as the client. Education and fitness are both a race with no finish line. And no matter what, there may be an end goal, like if somebody wants to lose a certain amount of weight, or they want to get gain so much amount of muscle, or whatever the SMART's goal is at the time. Once they hit that goal, they're going to reset another one, or they should. And they should always try to keep growing in a positive way and always set goals. Because if you just hit a goal and then you just kind of don't set another one, or you don't think ahead, then what ends up happening is people start to regress. And then they get to the point to where they were before they even started that goal that they finally achieved. And I see that more so than, I'm going to just maintain and all is well. I usually see the opposite, without something else to push them forward.
Yeah. And with the personal training side of things, this is just a me thing. One of the things that frustrates me is when I have people in the industry who want to earn a lot of money. They want to charge a lot of money, but they get frustrated that they need to take continuing education. It's a privilege to work within an industry that requires you to have continuing education. Like, imagine going to your doctor, I won't say lawyer, Wendy this time, doctor, and they don't have to have continuing education, right? So the reason I think that frustration happens is that people wait in the continuing education cycle, and then they panic and they grab things, and then they don't feel like they're getting their money's worth. Well, if it wasn't a skill you needed or a skill you're going to utilize and you did it from convenience, it wasn't the best investment. But so what I do is I have different things I have to track for my CEUs. I make a plan over that 2-year period, and I identify early in that 2-year period, or even sometimes before, okay, what do I see changing in the industry? Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? What do I need to do to fill an educational gap or refresh on? And that way, when I go do my courses, it's in a timely manner. I don't feel rushed. I actually gain more from the education, and I feel like it's an investment. It's not an expense. So to me, I always ask those questions when somebody says that to me, and inevitably, they're like, I have 3 months left. It's like, well, what did you do with the last year and 9 months? You didn't make a game plan for success.
Well, I'm right there with you, because I'm like you, Marty. I mean, with me having my manual therapy license, I have to have, 20 hours, 12 of it has to be hands-on, 12 can be online. And then of course, none of those actually really merge into what I need for my CPT and the things that I need to do to maintain my my certification for training, which is, I need both in order to make a living to do what I do. And so
Cool.
I've already done, 6.5 hours of stuff that I need to do for my license. And then, now with Optima coming up,
That's right.
1.9 free. I mean, heck yeah. And, and then at that point, I know we're going to talk about that next week, but I think it's an easy grab. It's not very expensive, and it is so worth it. So worth it.
Totally. And I'm in the same boat with the license and the personal transformation. But again, I geek out on that stuff. I enjoy it. And I guarantee you that's why we have had a chance to do what we do in our career, because we take that continuing education so passionately.
Yes. And I learn something new every time I take a different course. And even there's some that I've repeated because I wanted a refresher. And it's like, wait a minute, that wasn't a refresher. Like, there was new research that came out. Correct. The same thing when you look in our textbooks, and the same thing when you're looking at, our CPT and our CES, when you're looking at those two textbooks. We've got language changes because there was more research to say, like, for instance, we're no longer calling things self-myofascial release. Well, why? Because we don't know what we're releasing. So it's a technique. This is how you do some mobility assessments. Why? Because it's easier to navigate, easier to have the client perform, and it's super fast. So there's always ways to make your life easier, better, but you're also going to be in the know. If I stopped learning when I graduated from college, holy moly.
My clients would be in a ton of trouble.
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed.
Cool.
So have a game plan. All right. Let's move to the next slide, and let's talk about some definitions.
Yeah. So when we talked about this, I brought it up already. I said the art versus the science. And so, why not put something in here? So science is that systematically the body of knowledge on a particular subject. Then art is a skill at doing a specified thing, typically one acquired through practice. So there's some carryover. But the way I look at this and the way I define it is, when we created the book for the NASM, OPT, or CES, or you name the course, we are teaching it in a perfect world scenario. Mm-hmm. Right? We're assuming that every client's going to be compliant. Every client's going to be there on time. Every client is going to do a full body workout. Every client's going to do every phase of the training. And okay, got it. The art of it is what happens when somebody comes in versus the next person that comes in versus the next person that comes in, and they keep throwing you their life scenarios, their curveballs, their things like that. So the science isn't going to, it's going to change, but once you learn it, you're going to just continue to tweak it and grow it. But how you apply that differently to every single person. And I'm not even talking about their goals right now, because we've done a lot of webinars on different parts of the model, different goals, etc. Let's just talk about different people and different communication styles and different processes and different stressors in life. Add that to the mix of the different goals and the different movement compensations. But if you can really start to hone both of these skills, that's where you are going to be in high demand, and you're going to enjoy the effects that you're going to be able to elicit on your clients, as well as financially. I would have to think that you're going to be happy that you have a prosperous career.
Yeah. And I always, if I'm trying to explain it to someone that maybe, that's like kind of new to the industry, I always say, okay, think of science as like you're learning about the body. You're learning about, exercise physiology. You're learning about, anatomy, the way that, the way that the body is meant to move, and we move in 3 planes, and there's joints and muscles and stuff to make that happen. That's the science of human movement, right? And then you've got, like you said, the OPT model, like it's the art and it's creativity. But even if you were to take, exercise science out of it, and you were thinking about a cook, let's say, and you've got somebody that wants to be a baker, and anybody can bake a cake. You're learning about the different ingredients, what goes into making a cake. But in order to make one of those fancy, like unbelievable cakes that you see sometimes in, like, when you go to a restaurant, they've got their just like desserts on display, and they are like unbelievably creative with what they can do with that stuff. That takes time and practice and everything. People can all bake a cake. Anybody can learn anatomy. It's just, what can you do to make those tweaks, to make it as fine-tuned as possible in order to get that unbelievable outcome. And that usually, when it comes to cake, again, desserts here, you can start to see, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can make a cake. I made a cake for my dad for his birthday, and it was not pretty, tasted amazing, but but I don't do that often. And that was one thing. He's like, I want you to bake me a cake. I'm like, done. I looked at it and I'm like, I tried to write on it and everything. My writing all like blended together. It's like big white blobs. I'm like, you know what? There was a lot of love. And that's what I told him. This is love right here. It doesn't look pretty.
Well, you're left-handed. It's got to be harder to write on a cake. That's all I'm saying.
I just put the cake way over and then do it. I don't have this thing going on. I still write up. But yeah, it's got to be the paper or the cake or whatever has to be way turned so my hand can be straight.
Now, the key question, the most important question, was it chocolate cake?
No, it was lemon cake, lemon icing. That's his favorite.
If that's his request, it's fine. But I'm just saying, if you have chocolate, then the look of it is even less impactful because it tastes good because it's chocolate. This actually tasted really. I was actually. I believe you.
Impressed.
I believe you.
It was something way different. That's something that I don't normally cook. So.
But I just think chocolate covers up more mistakes. That's maybe that's just when I cook. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm more a vanilla fan, so I'll choose vanilla over chocolate. But I don't usually say no to a candy bar either. So what do I know?
You go.
Moving on. So if we look at the next slide and we actually start to kind of bring all this together, we want to think about like the 3 elements for long-lasting change. And, oftentimes people come in and they think it's all about what they're going to do at the gym in order to make those changes. And yes, that is one step of a 3-part, I call it a 3-part series, but it's really not. You're looking at the 3 parts of what it is in order to make long-term lifestyle changes. Yes, you want to get yourself into the gym. Yes, you have to commit. Yes, you have to put it in your schedule. And yes, there's, flexibility routines, and there's things that you need to do in order to see positive changes on how you look and how you feel. However, what you put into your body, the fuel, the things that you're eating, and the way that you're, kind of building not just your workout plan, you need to have a nutrition plan. Do you need to take a multivitamin? Do you need to take any type of supplements because you've done your blood work and you see that there's something that you may be lacking? So, looking at yourself just really holistically and then being smart with your choices. Are you logging your food? Are you watching your calorie intake? Do you have a fitness tracker or some kind of tracker that, kind of looks at everything, those 2 components? Because I'll tell you, you can work out all day, but if you eat like crap, you're not going to see those results. But you have to, ready for this, change your behavior. That if you're used to eating out all the time and just eating what you want whenever you want and drinking all the time, you're probably, again, because you're used to the social environment, if you don't make changes, even not saying don't be social, but make better choices, it all really does play a part. But you've got to want to change. You truly have to change in your brain, and you have to set a goal, and then you have to kind of stick to it. And over time, hopefully that results in long-term changes, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. As I always say, it's hard to out-exercise a bad diet. And when you also look at it, food is medicine. So even if I have some friends that are genetic freaks, they could eat McDonald's all day and their body weight doesn't change. So if that was their only measurement of success, but that doesn't mean internally that you're healthy, right? Or your energy levels and all these other issues. And, maybe there's a point where it catches up to you when you hit a certain age, so I think that those are kind of some key things that the behavioral change specialist can really help you focus on is, why are you doing the behaviors you're doing? And do you have a complete solution? Are you at least addressing those 3 main components, at least at some level?
Well, and unfortunately, I fall victim to this because when I was in college, I ate all the time. And, of course, I was living on a college budget. So I didn't have, I'm not going to like Ruth's Chris or some crazy restaurant spending a ton of money, even though there's a lot of butter in that. But regardless, I'm going somewhere where it's very, organic chicken and, steamed vegetables that are grown in gardens and stuff like that. I'm not doing that. I was going to, McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, things that were fast, quick, simple. I could grab on the go. They were open 24 hours, and I never really gained weight at the time. Now, granted, I was way younger, but when I went in and did my physical, my cholesterol was out of control. Wow. And they're like, what did you do? And I'm like, okay, like I know how to fix this. And I went back the next year and everything was perfect, but I had to change what I was used to doing because it was convenient. And that's just it. Cooking stuff and doing meal, prep and all that stuff. You have to think ahead to make positive changes. And that's what I did. But it took one time for the doctor to be like, wow, look at your numbers. And I'm like, oh, my bad. Okay. Yep.
That's a big motivator.
That was enough. That was enough for me. So I've been there. I'm not perfect. I've never claimed to be perfect, and I've made multiple mistakes. But the big thing is you always learn, and you have to make a change. So there we have
I hear
it.
that common theme throughout.
You think? No, it even says it on there. Make a change.
Exactly.
So why don't you tell me about some coaching and communication here, Marty?
We've hit on this earlier as well as in other, roundtables, but this obviously our behavior change specialist will go into it in depth in case this is something that you haven't really studied. Is sometimes it's how you deliver the message is going to be very important. So you got to be, as you said, empathetic. So simple things, changing just the way you speak. I hear what you're saying. Having some encouraging statements like you are absolutely capable of making the change. Then you can go back to, that sounds like a rough situation. My sense is that you are a very strong, resilient person. And then I know what you're doing isn't easy. You have the ability to face this challenge. So just having that empathetic response and that encouragement just can get somebody to be like, okay, you're right. Instead of going, suck it up, let's go. It's like, that might work for some people some of the times, but there's been science behind this that shows that this is a better way to coach and communicate, especially in the position that we're in when somebody's already kind of humbling themselves or, exposing themselves in areas that they may not feel comfortable with.
Oh, and I hear this all the time. And I always try to go in with certain positive things in my head that I can actually express to my clients. Like, not about how they look, not about what they're wearing, nothing about any of that stuff. Because even as you said in other webinars, Marty, that's not really the best thing to do that. But it's like if they've had a really crummy day or, something's happening at work, it's like, what, today is going to pass and tomorrow's a brand new day. Just, wake up in the morning and try to do this, that, and the other. You can do this. You can change your mindset. You can make a difference. You can be impactful. And they're like, you know what? I can. And so even though they may not believe it, if you hear it and you really, truly can commit to what you're saying because it resonates, as soon as it does, then you can really make a difference in someone's life.
No question. And that could be sometimes the more important part of the session than the entire workout.
Yes. Unfortunately, we're more than just
right.
a trainer, right? It's sometimes we listen to their stories. Sometimes we have to play around with the Family Feud. It's kind of sometimes very uncomfortable, but always keep it positive.
Yes, indeed.
You check your crap at the door. You walk in and it's all about them.
We're not allowed to have a bad day.
No, not unless the session is free. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. And then who's paying whom? So, all right, let's move on to the next slide. And this kind of gets into truly the Transtheoretical Model of behavior change. And there really are 5 different levels of change that you always want to consider when you're working with someone. And I kind of mentioned this in the very beginning, but I'll take the first one, Marty, and then we can kind of just, I guess, kind of go back and forth. But the first one is a big one, and it's pre-contemplation. And so when somebody's talking about when you're thinking about what that means, it's that they're like not intending to take action in the future, but, maybe in the next 6 months, like, like I know that I need to do this. I really want to do this, but that they're not making any plans. They're not like scheduling stuff or sitting down to figure out financially how they're going to do this or time-wise how they're going to do something. But, somebody mentions it like, oh, that's a really good idea. You know what? I should join that group, or I should meet and do the run club in the mornings. And it sounds awesome, but yet, that it's far out and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And this hopefully transitions into that contemplation where now they're like, maybe I would like to go back to, for me, maybe mixed martial arts, or somebody else to the spin class, or somebody else to, I've always wanted to get to a gym. So it starts to become a little more real, and they start to say, well, you know what, when summer comes, so now it's still a little bit away, but it's maybe within that next 6 months, it becomes a little bit more real to them, and they start to frame in what that could potentially look like.
And then pretty much, number 3 would be the prep phase. So now they're preparing to actually, take action. So, maybe someone's like, you know what, I need to go to the gym. I know that the only way that I'm going to hit my specific goals is if I hire someone, I pay someone to do this, they hold me accountable. So, you know what, I'm going to make a call. And so, usually that's the way that I look at it, is when they signed up to have that assessment, that's in the prep phase, because they are making that commitment. they're scheduling something out with you because they know they probably can't get in your books the next day. And they are preparing to make the changes that they've been thinking about. Now they're kind of like, you know what, this needs to happen. So to me, I think number 3 is the one that I embrace the most, because for them to even really start to make the plan, to put it in their schedule and make it happen, that's big, guys. That's so big in our industry. So I think that's one that I highlight a lot. And I keep thinking, okay, you know, within that month, you want to keep it positive and get them excited about that meeting, because it can make a huge difference long-term for them.
Yeah, sometimes you get that one chance, right? So then we move into action, which is where they, you know, have made specific overt modifications in their lifestyle within the past 6 months. So this could be they joined the gym, they started training, they're monitoring their nutrition intake, any of those things. They could start walking, maybe they start adding mobility in, whatever. But now there's momentum. We have accomplished that they are doing something. So that obviously these phases are very important for us to be integral, make it enjoyable, make it specific for them, all the SMART goals, all that fun stuff that we've talked about in the past. So that way they get the best outcomes. And then hopefully, Wendy, I'll let you finish up, they go to this phase.
Yeah. So hopefully long-term, they hit their one goal, and they're starting, as I said earlier, they're starting to prepare for the upcoming goals. What is it? But, you know, once they hit the one major like milestone, like whatever it was, whether it was they wanted, you know, weight loss, or they wanted to be able to successfully run a half marathon or full marathon, and they do it, but they want to stay and maintain how they feel and maintain the distance, but being smart to not, you know, not to wear down, you know, their joints and their muscles, but having a very well-rounded program. Once they kind of get there, and you're kind of taking the next step of what are they going to do next, you know, usually that's the maintenance stage. This is where, you know, they've made specific, you know, they've hit specific goals. They've made really good lifestyle changes, but you want to make sure that they don't revert back into something where they start to, you know, go in the complete opposite direction. And so again, maintenance is hard. And I don't think people understand that, because they were super excited about hitting their goal. They want to be there, but then they're like, oh, I already look a certain way, so it's okay if I miss the gym today. Well, then that one day it's like, oh, this other meeting came up, or, oh, you know, my kid has this event, so I'm not going to be able to make it in the gym today, but I'll go tomorrow. I'll go. And then that's when you start to see like a shift again, and it's usually a negative shift. So it's very important to keep the momentum going.
Yeah. And I'll take consistency over intensity any day.
Yes.
Because, you know, there's time. I'm not saying you don't want to be intense at some point in time in your training, but I want people to train back to that original slide or two, is it's a race with no finish line. I'm not looking for you to sprint for the next 3 months, burn yourself out, hate the process. And then all of a sudden you're like, and then you go back to the, you know, pre-contemplation phase. I want you to groove that maintenance phase, changing your program around, all that fun stuff. But I'm looking for consistency.
Yes. And I had a client, this is a true story. He was a computer guy. I mean, unbelievable IT guy, was at the desk all the time, gained a ton of weight, felt horrible about himself, didn't like how he looked, didn't like how he felt. And I'm like, why don't you just come in, have a session? You know, first one's on me, because he was a friend too. You know, first one's on me. Let's just get you moving. Let's see how you feel. Let's see if there's things that I can make you feel better. And then he ended up saying, okay, now I want, you know, after his first session, he's like, man, I'm worse off than I thought. And that's what I always hear. I can't even do this when, you know, and he's way younger than I am. So he should easily be able to do some of the stuff that we had. But I'm like, you know what, rather than, you know, getting down on yourself, let's make some changes. Let's get you in the gym. You know, you start your own program. If you want me to be your trainer, I'm happy to do that. I can find another trainer, again, because we're friends. And he was like, no. And so he stuck with me. He showed up on time. He was very, very weighed his food. His wife called me and said, what have you done to my husband? Because he wouldn't eat anything. He wouldn't go out drinking. He didn't want to do anything. He looks amazing. He quit his job, went into a totally different profession. And now he's running Spartan races. He's doing these crazy runs, you know, for, you know, really good, you know, just things in his community. And he's, you know, he's really more of a spokesperson now. And I mean, it was me just saying, hey, let's just get you in the gym and see if we can make you feel better. And this guy has taken off. And so, yeah, but he had to commit. And then he realized that, okay, if I want to stay married, I am going to have to make some changes, but he looks amazing still. He's doing things, but he's also realized that there is more to life than counting your food, counting your calories, watching what you eat. You've got to enjoy life too. So there's a balance.
Absolutely. Yep. Great points.
Yes. So now if we kind of think about putting it all together, it kind of goes into different processes. And so when we look at the next slide here, you're going to kind of see that it's more than just an outcome. And I think that's a really big thing. So Marty, you want to talk about like goal setting?
Yeah, goal setting is very important. Again, we touched on this with the Instructor Roundtable that I did on my doctoral research, that there are a high propensity of people that really want to set goals. And when they have goals, they stick with them. So it's important to know that, and when we look at the goal is it outcome? So this relates to winning or losing, typically against an opponent. And again, the opponent could be, you want to run a 5K race and you want to get in the top 10% or top 5% for your age group. That can be, it doesn't have to be so cutthroat competitive, but can be. So
you're not first, you're last.
Ricky Bobby, I get it.
Just kidding. Sorry, didn't
There's
mean
something something to be said about a good Ricky Bobby quote whenever you can get it in there. And then performance is at least I knew it. So the end product of performance usually is expressed in some terms of personal achievement. I want to earn a black belt. I want to finish a marathon. I want to lose a certain amount of pounds so they can achieve personal best running that Boston Marathon, as you see here. And then the process for goal setting is the process that the individual wants to engage to be perform in a satisfactory manner. Keep a consistent pace. So I want to run an 8-minute pace, whatever that is. So, it's just good to not just say, let's set a goal, but understand these differences between outcome, performance, and process if you are going to set goals with your client. So that way it's not just something that you set once and there's no really game plan to that as well.
Well, I think that comes back to the SMART goals. You have to be specific. Mm-hmm. It has to be measurable, attainable, so, again, really kind of revisiting what, the SMART or SMARTs, depending on which book, what you're learning about and which way you're trying to set goals. There's different ways of doing it, but they have to be very specific because anybody can, I want to start running. Okay, well, what does that mean? Do you want to run on a treadmill? You want to run outside? Do you want to run on the, on the trail run? Is there like a certain distance you're trying to run? Is there a certain time you want to beat? You've got to be more specific. But more specific, remember, guys, we talked about this in the subjective information. The more specific you are in the very beginning and the more information you can gather, the more you can really build out a program that's individualized, specific, and help them reach specific goals by moving better, feeling better, but then also making sure too that it's realistic to what they want to achieve long term.
Yeah, because sometimes the running is when you ask the questions, it's like, oh, you want to lose 5 pounds. Okay. But they only thought running was the way to get there. So that's why, or it could be that they want to run a marathon. I've seen it go both ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. Hey, Marty, I need to run a half marathon in the next month. You think you can make that happen? I haven't ran in 2 years.
We will talk offline. Wendy.
Is that a realistic goal?
I don't want this recorded and out in the public domain with what I'm about to tell you.
True story, y'all. Just letting you know. So, all right, moving on. So the key takeaways, I think you guys pretty much got it. You have the ability to make a impactful change for someone. Like, however you can speak to someone, you can identify how they learn, you can identify their fears, and then be very specific in their goal setting to help them achieve their goals. And then having, the ability to move things around if things are not working for them, meaning if they're coming in and they're having a bad day, maybe doing certain exercises you had planned it's not the most ideal time to introduce new things. Maybe you need to do something else because they're just not mentally there, but they're there. So communication, again, as Marty and I have always talked about, that is key. You've got to communicate to your client. You've got to ask them how they're feeling. You're always assessing. So you're seeing how they're walking in. You see kind of their mood by how their face, their posture, all that stuff. But the big thing is don't get so lost in the science that you're not connecting with them. Yes, the anatomy is the anatomy. Biomechanics is biomechanics. Your programs should be your programs, but you also have to be able to have that rapport and understand, what's going on with life and be able to change like right on the spot by, regressing or progressing something based on what's going on with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the more you learn this, what I call soft skill, and you continue to develop your science, it just becomes where they blend so well together, and you just really can make a huge impact, and your career will take off for sure.
Yes. So check out the behavioral change specialist. If you guys were debating on whether you should do it, I've gone through it. Marty's gone through it. I mean, we really see that there was some really good information in there. And even if you think you know it, it's always good to refresh anyway, as we talked about.
Absolutely. So. Cool.
Yes. Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, that kind of brings us to our contact information. If you guys have any questions, I mean, Marty's like the behavior change guy. Like I said, he did his doctorate program pretty much on understanding, reading people and changing. But, if you just want to say hi to me or say, hey, I really like for you guys to talk about this subject, you can always contact me at wendy.bats@nasm.org, or you can find me on Instagram at wendy.bats13.
And then my information's there, marty.miller@nasm.org. Instagram, dr.martymiller72. And just a couple key takeaways. Don't forget to check out Optima. That's coming up soon, as Wendy talked about at the beginning. And then you can check out Wendy and Ken Miller on the Random Fit podcast, as well as every Tuesday, doing my morning coffee talks. We're there to help you guys. So thank you so much for attending. Wendy, great job as always.
You as well.
Take care, everybody.